said about in her thanks for Joan and Howard and for putting together this series. And I'm so pleased to be sort of bookended by Janice and Quentin and their wonderful work this afternoon. And I want to thank every single person that's here today for joining with this reading, because the readings don't happen without the audience and what you bring to those of us who stand up here. So thank you, and let's go for it. When they ask about my face, I will say something about snow. The skittered tracks of a hare just prior to the hush. I will say wind bores salt into seaboards, taut rope burns a furrow, leaf rust in spring autumn's elms. Hoarfrost bit by hobnail, meadow after the scythe, the dory's barnacled hull. A peppermint held too long against the palate. When they ask about my face, I will say that even a trodden carriage leaves wheel marks in the stone. That shrapnel can flare a staggering tattoo. That left to their own devices, sparks of midnight fireworks will carve ferocious trails into the black wax of the sky. Troll dolls. Who remembers troll dolls? Troll dolls, what, about 4 inches tall and kind of puggy-faced and stumpy-armed and had shocks of orange or red or blue or green hair. And I didn't have one. My mother had her reasons. Troll dolls. What we would look like when the world simmered to its nuclear end. I was not allowed to have one. I thought they were adorable, but what's forbidden that doesn't beguile? Besides, I was the only girl in the entire 3rd grade without one, which made me special in all the wrong ways. My best friend tried to rescue me with a lime-haired beauty I hid beneath the bed, until it was found. Ugly is as ugly does, my parents said. They could have held me upside down by the ankles and pasted stars on my forehead, and that would have made more sense. Instead, they strung me along on logic played backwards while I percolated toward 13, which is when the real meltdown began. I've been inhabited of late by a mermaid. And my hope is, I'm going to read 3 mermaid poems. My hope is that maybe she'll shimmer her way out of me and into you for a time, because when she takes me, I'm not much good for anything else. The mermaid sublets a basement flat. I'm warned the heat rises. My view, sidewalk through a high window. It's okay. I'm used to dwelling beneath the surface, a clear line to cleave the elements. I've been craving aridity, the thin resistance of air, weightless incandescence against my flesh. Much has been made of the buoyancy of water, but it's hard to live inside a thing which touches every part of you. The truest lover I've known is myself. I've been asked how I'll get by, one finned leg when I might need 2. I'll find a way through. Propulsion has never been a simple proposition. My eyes at the windowsill float with the horizon. My new neighbor's legs flow up and down the walk. I want to lean out and kiss their feet. I think you'll recognize in this one a certain brand of tuna. And the mermaid regards her image on a tuna can. Once upon a time, my problem was a matter of larger than life. Once meaning not now, time a way of disappointing yourself, and a problem's no more than what you made of it then. Now I'm diminished to less than an inch. You tell me when I went blonde. Teeth of an anchor woman, scepter glinting in paper gold, Rainbow above water, I'm a blue-suited body in ebb to green. The yellow tail fin is where it all fans out. The sea in this can, and I, its dependable chicken. And the mermaid stops by True Value to pick up a screwdriver. I don't drift the aisles anymore. It's easier just to ask. Once in Sherwin-Williams, I knocked over a display of paint chips with my tail, ebb tide and sea foam and starfish and clamshell swirling eddies on the concrete floor as the big store fan pulsed its waves from over by the caulking display. I turned. That was all it took. The guys up front were all elbow jab and guffaw, pointing and saying fish out of water, but you just try it, negotiating 3 dimensions all at once. I'm as soft-shelled out of water as in, but I'm trying not to be so out of my depth. When I asked the boy at the hardware counter where I might find the orange juice and vodka, he gives that oh-so-familiar squint, looking at me like I'm from some other element, which is true, I suppose, if you don't know enough to inhabit your world in the same way it inhabits you. What I need is a drink, I say to him, and at last comes the glimmer in his eyes that tells me he gets my meaning now, and he takes off down the hall, returning with a couple of bottles of Aquafina that he plunks down between us, him saying sorry, it's the best he can do, and how he always thought he'd turn out to be an architect or maybe a chef, but there was this girl, and now the kid, and it's not such a bad thing, is it, that he can tell me anything about flat washers and O-rings I'd ever need to know? He wraps his thumb and forefinger around a cap, twisting it so elegantly that I'm easing through the salt reefs again, that fluid slippage through boulder to dark, my hips bumping flanks with the leathery sharks and the cryptic cuttlefish, and when the seal on the bottle of water breaks, it stops us both for just a moment, the exhalation, that hiss of something trapped escaping. I'm very, very, very pleased to say that next year Future Cycle Press will be publishing my book, The House of Nobody Home. And so the next few poems I'll read, and there are a couple others in this assortment, but the next few poems I'll read are going to be from my forthcoming book. And this first one is titled Reincarnation. To come back, to have come back, as something kinder, would be, would have been, a kindness. Blue glass dish for the finches to splash in, middle sea ribboning through a din. And still I cannot cross the plains without seeing on every barbed fence a boy tied there. Headlamp newly on or soon to be flicked off. Next time will be moths. A mausoleum untended is seepage. Sometimes to melt is the only way out. Let there be one tool precisely milled for the doing or undoing. To return as apple, to bleed nothing but clear juice. Adam, Eve, garden, snake. This is Adam, the sequel. This mount of apples, and when I provoke it, an entire garden balmy with cider. Also that other world smell, the early sweetness of decomposition. Oh, to have been known by so many names. Cameo, delicious, Candy Crisp, Pippin, green sleeves, Topaz, Gala, beauty of bath, bruises to be cut or eaten around, and it seeds the sort of bitterness that can be swallowed whole. Knife to taut skin and the voluptuous split, the throaty namesake, its rise and fall. A worm once made a carnivore of me. And then that old woman in each one's dried self, so many faces of Eve. The heft of Rome apples, one in each palm, weighs like imagination. A lot of you know I spent a good number of years, 26, with the Postal Service, and so I'm often surprised, and I don't know why, but that letters and stamps and the post office show up in my poems. I don't know why that, maybe a bit more alarms me than surprises me, but this poem is called Missive. There's a letter in the mail that didn't mean what it said when it left the house. Carrier pigeon tangled in the ribbon of no turning back. Snapping turtle in the postman's tray, riding in on a stamp with a flag named Forever. The little toy truck toddles down the lane on the right side of the cinematographer's split screen, carrying its happy load of wished books and baked cookies. Musical notes twirl in the trees. And now, from the left, the camera zooms in on that single envelope, black scrawl darkening as it edges nearer to delivery. Too late, screech the wheels. Too late, slams the mailbox lid. Is it any wonder I keep looping through this video of the sinkhole, the acres of cypress towering one instant on the brink, and then in the next vanished to the abyss? I was really excited earlier in the year. I got a notice from Gettysburg Review that they had accepted 3 poems of mine, and that was a big thrill, and they'll be forthcoming in I think the end of October, the winter issue, anyway. And what was doubly thrilling about that acceptance was that one of the poems was actually a cento I had written, or cento, as some of you may call it. And for those of you who don't know that, a cento is a poem or a work that's taken from, that takes the lines of another person's work or a body of work and combines them in a different form and makes its own poem. So in this case, I had taken some lines from Quentin Hallett's work and combined them into a poem. So while my poem will be in Gettysburg Review, it will actually be Quentin's work, Quentin's words that appear. So it's a double pleasure to have that happen, and in such a fine journal. And I will try to take a pause after each line so you'll have a sense of what her lines were as they originally broke from a number of different poems of hers, I think 17 or 18. And the title as well is a line from Quentin's work. Of 1,000 other things that turn up, cento from Quentin Hallett. Wow. If there is a fresh pear on the counter, if spring blares magnolia and forsythia along the verges of night, there is no possibility of betrayal. Walk into the woods. If volume is ever to be increased or diminished, stealth is your best suit, refracting too much noise and light, invisible to everyone but you. Listen to me tap the old tunes sotto voce. To measure or contain is an insult where metal corrodes just short of bursting. It might be a bullet in the chamber or a blank, or sometimes pendulous clouds. Yet every condolence left beside the bridge. At first, one of anything marries the void. If there is a feral woman, forget that old myth, tough as dried fruit. You won't last an hour in open air. To name the body of water, to cover innocent shrubs before they clench, to wrap but our arms around each other. I was thinking about what I was going to read, and I realized it's late September. I've been thinking about friendship, and it's what we have, isn't it? Friendship. And 2 years ago, in early October, I lost a friend, a very dear friend. Her name was Lee Shostrom. She was 84 years old. She was my counselor in high school, and we remained friends through the rest of her lifetime and my lifetime, which still continues. And I would like to dedicate this reading of this poem to Lee, which was written on the occasion of her 70th birthday. And I'd like to dedicate this poem not only to her, but to friends past, friends present, and friends in the future. Lee at 70. She's been waiting for this milestone so she can be obstreperous. Civility's karmic warranty only holds for so long. The airport detectors wail when she tries to smuggle her new hip through. All these years of wanting to be a card-carrying something, and this is what it has come to. A plastic voucher she keeps in her wallet that certifies her joint is genuine titanium. Its melting point, she's learned, is 1660 Celsius. She no longer dreads the day that theory will be tested. The calendar she bought for the impending new year displays a dozen vintage travel posters. She won't cheat and look through the months ahead, their steaming engines and sailing ships. She's lived through every year they're bound to recollect. This summer, in a chrome and concrete forum in Sicily, she listened as her daughter delivered a paper to a convention of her peers. 600 jet-lagged clinical psychologists. Her only child, she toasted her afterward in the sun-balmed piazza, their table wobbling on the cobbled stones as they drank bad Chianti against a Scirocco wind. Years ago, she was a guidance counselor for high school kids. One of her girls is in her 50s now and still sends chatty letters from Oregon, finishing always with "thank you for saving my life." It's become a kind of joke for the two of them, a jostly sort of suspension bridge to span the chasm between humility and truth. Really, who's to know what salvation's all about? In a month, she'll turn the calendar's page and start marking X's through a brand new year. A blue locomotive waits for her there, building the furious store of steam that will drive it across plains into tunnels and hills, on track to a pinprick of vanishing point. But tonight it's enough to pick up the phone and dial the number to City Hall to complain to the recording about some slight thing or other. I have been, back to letters, post office, all that. I have been amassing, some would say, letters, old letters, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, and taking them and taking the language from them, plundering the language, adding my own language, reshaping them, pushing them around a little bit, and bullying them into new letters that I'm calling poems. So I will read a few of those now. Yeah, I think I'll read a few. This first one has a title, and it's a line, and it's, "I do not know how the apples will keep in our new cellar. I have some doubts." West New York, New Jersey, January 16th, 1910. Quite a job it was, getting moved, to be settled at last. We had not wanted this. Minnie took dinner with us on Sunday. The cows will go soon. Mr. Keyes tires of the milking. Not as many peaches as I had thought, all the Hollis news. The old Orpingtons are laying. The neighbors will take all we can spare, a little spending money. We must clean out the well. Weather bad for everyone's health. No seeing through the window for the snow. I am having sweet apples and brown bread and milk, of which I am very fond. Lengthening days. The boy delivering said the butter was paid for, so I let it go at that. And this kind of goes all the way around the world, and it's January 10th, 1954. So think about that date, 1954. Dear G, it is strange to be upside down in Australia. I'm having to calculate the months on my fingers, but it's beginning to feel normal, even when you mention snow in Iowa and we're wrapping boxes in suntan weather. I am sending some of the new Queen Elizabeth stamps. She's to visit here next month. She was actually on her way out here when her father died, but she had to rush back to England. The papers are getting all excited and telling us how to behave. I don't know what they think we're likely to do. I certainly don't like the idea of standing 6 or 7 hours in the street waiting for her to pass, but neither do I like paying out £1 for a seat, as I am saving to buy a typewriter with French accents on it. I'm glad the Queen's got Philip to keep her company, because otherwise I think it would be pretty dreadful, despite all the new scenes and customs. I've been to the pictures a few times, saw the robe, From Here to Eternity, and Kiss Me, Kate. I surely miss our American films. Regards, W. And then a little postcard from 1953, July 3, 1953, Mom and Pop. Here is a postcard of polar bears at the zoo in Brookfield. They sure weren't white like you see in the picture. We have just stopped at a station some miles out from Chicago. On my left is a huge tomato farm. The soil is black and very rich, the land flatter than a table. No wonder a great deal of corn can be raised here. The barns and houses look like they were taken out of a storybook. Our Mississippi farms seem like child's play beside these we are passing. People here are rich or just work hard. Your son. And I'm going to finish with a couple of two short poems. The first one is called Scar. At age 5, I put my hand to a wall. I was only trying to steady myself, and crushed goodbye the bee thereon, my first remembered kill. The stinger pulled so swiftly out. Such a small thorn I carry on my palm this life. Tablecloth. You know that old trick. Grasping one edge and jerking it so fast and clean that the plates and glasses remain in place, just an afterthought of shimmer left to record the stun. We think of it as magic, but what hasn't been yanked from beneath us, and still we're left standing. Thank you.